Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for joining me again on another episode of Get Intuit with Gila. I'm Gila Glassberg, registered dietitian and certified intuitive eating counselor. And today I have Jennifer McGurk. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure, we're so excited to have you. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yes, so I've been a dietitian for, oh my gosh, 14, almost 14 years.
Wow.
I love what I do. I am so passionate about the field of nutrition, especially intuitive eating and a weight inclusive approach. Eating disorder recovery, so passionate about helping people have a healthy relationship with food. And for the past couple of years, I've actually expanded that into my work with professionals. So that's mainly what I do right now. I do have a group practice, so I do manage and run the group practice part of my business. But my professional facing work is through pursuing private practice and specifically dietitian business school, where I help other dietitians build a successful business in this specialty as well. So I care so much about this mission. I've just seen so many people really expand their business and help other clients. And like, that's what really fuels me.
It's so awesome. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast because I've been a dietitian for 5 years.
Yeah.
And I just recently started my business, so, like, I definitely look up to you and your growing business, and it's just so exciting to have you here.
Well, yeah, I'm so excited to see how your business has grown so much because we talked maybe a year ago, and now I feel like, look at what's happened for you. It's like so cool, to
Yeah.
see people just really put themselves out there with their mission, and therefore they help so many people. And I think the key is just not, of course everyone is afraid. I don't want to say like it's not being fearful, but like I think the key is just to put yourself out there, connect with as many people as you possibly can, like try to get your business in front of your ideal clients, and it will grow authentically and organically. And I think
Mhm.
it's so cool to see.
Thank you, and also, it's, like, funny to hear someone else's perspective because, like, we're our worst critic, so I'll be like,
Oh, I know.
"Oh," like, even yesterday, I'm in a mastermind and with other, like, professionals, and I'm like, "I don't know, I just have, like, this 5 to 10-year vision, but I'm, like, so not there yet," and they're like, "Look at where you were," like, "Just keep looking where
Exactly.
you were," because but it's just as business owners, it's like, it is really scary because everything is just our own decision.
Yeah. And I'm a very, very futuristic person, so much so that I think it helps me so much, but also like holds me back a little bit because I'm like
Mhm,
already thinking like, what's the next step? What's the next step? And
mhm.
I think I know for me, I haven't done yoga now in like a very, very, very long time, but I always remember what some yoga teachers have taught me. It's basically like be in the present moment, like be in the
Mhm,
present and
mhm.
really kind of enjoy what you have. But of course, thinking about the future is exciting, but
Right,
it
right.
can definitely hold us back sometimes.
Yeah. It's actually interesting because it was just the Jewish holiday of
Yeah.
Sukkot, and I decided to take Instagram off my phone just for, like, the span of, like, a week and a half, and I was talking to the head of the mastermind yesterday, and I was just like, "I feel, like, so free." Like, I didn't have to, like, compare myself to anyone or
Mhm.
look at my likes or my statistics, and just, like, that, zoning out really like, the break really does help with the creativity.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I completely agree. I think social media, like boundaries with social media is so important. I think deleting Instagram from your phone every once in a while is totally fine. In fact, I
Mhm,
encourage it,
mhm,
to take a
mhm.
break from everything. And comparisonitis is real,
Yeah.
and I
Oh,
always
it's
say like
real.
don't
Yeah.
compare your beginning or your middle of your journey to someone else's end,
Right.
and
Right.
it's because I mean everyone has comparisonitis in some way or another, but I think it definitely shows up in business and it's something that we have to talk about a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah.
tell us how you or why you became a dietitian to begin with.
Yes, yeah. So I have a pretty common story that I'm so open about sharing. I had an eating disorder in high school, and basically, I decided to become a dietitian because I wanted to find the healthiest way to eat in my eating disorder. I
Mhm.
am very, very, very thankful for that experience. I know that that sounds weird. I'm like thankful for my eating disorder, but like if I didn't have my eating disorder back then, I never would have gotten into the field of nutrition and never would have become a dietitian. So I, have to say that everything happens for a reason. I went to Penn State for my undergrad education and then Johns Hopkins for my internship and then moved to New York and had my very first job. So It's been definitely a journey. I did not get help for my eating disorder until I was 23, 24 years old. So I definitely struggled for a while without getting help. So I think that's another reason why I'm so passionate about, like, if you're struggling, like, help is out there. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
definitely have a better life ahead of you, like with treatment, because treatment works.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I became a dietitian.
Got it. So you
Yeah.
were working in, like, what was your first job as a
Yeah.
dietitian?
So my first job, so after Hopkins, I went to New York City. I have no idea how I got hired, but I got hired at, it was called the FDI Diabetes Institute. So Friedman Diabetes Institute. Oh my gosh, it's been so long. I can't even remember the name, but it was through Beth Israel Hospital in the Lower East Side. And it was a diabetes clinic. It was an outpatient job. It was awesome. I loved the people that I worked with so much. But I did like very traditional dietetics, diabetes counseling. I ran a weight loss group. I'm not proud of
Mm-hmm.
that at all, but basically, like, it was a very traditional diabetes job. And that's when I actually got help for my eating disorder. And at the same time, I kind of said, like, oh, I'm not focusing on weight loss for myself. Like, this is really improving my relationship with food, like intuitive eating. That's how I found intuitive eating. I read the book at that time. It's like, intuitive eating, like, really is so helpful here. I wonder if I could apply this to my clients and like help them through a weight inclusive approach. Although it did not happen overnight. Like, there's this huge period of, probably for me, it was maybe a year or two of back and forth, like, is this the right way to go? I have
Mm-hmm.
no idea what I'm doing. Like, should I
Mm-hmm.
be a dietitian in the first place?
Right.
So back then, I tried as much as I could to like incorporate the principles of intuitive eating into the work that I was doing in diabetes. But eventually I did leave that job. I moved up to Rockland, got another job, and slowly but surely, like, really transitioned into a weight inclusive dietitian over the course of like 2 years.
Got it. Yeah, that is that is like a common story, like that we struggle with our own relationship with food, and then we're
Yeah.
like, oh, let's become a dietitian so we could become even more disordered,
No,
right?
I know.
But
I
then,
know.
but then the intuitive eating is just so eye-opening. Like, oh, right, this is exactly my life.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I'm so thankful for Evelyn and Elise for writing that book. I mean, I've told them multiple times. I feel like every single time I see them, I'm like, thank you so much for saving my life. Like, you really did save my life, like, not professionally and not just professionally, but personally too. Like, I'm so thankful for their work, and so thankful for the work of people that came before them, that like their work was built on their work. And
Hmm.
so, so, so happy to have found Health at Every Size and a weight inclusive approach.
So how did you even like find intuitive eating and health at every size?
Yeah, yeah. So in my, like, when I first got help for my eating disorder, I was reading the book. So at the same time, it was so interesting. Like, my therapist, she had read the book at the time too. But it was back, I mean, when was this? 2008. Like, it really wasn't as mainstream as it is right now. So she had read the book and she was helping me through a lot of things. But really, when it comes down to it, like, I never had a dietitian. I probably really would have benefited from having a dietitian back
Mhm.
then, my own dietitian, but I used the principles of intuitive eating throughout my eating disorder recovery. So, like, I challenged myself with so many different things, and not only, the food stuff, but also like the mental piece of it too.
Mhm. Definitely. Yeah, intuitive eating is it helps in so many areas of your life. I always say that to my clients, like intuitive eating can really like spill over into other areas of your life, and
Oh
it can
my
help
gosh,
you
exactly.
with so many things.
Exactly. There's so many, I mean, basically, like, I know intuitive eating. Like, once I healed my relationship with food, I had so much time to focus on the things that really mattered to me. Like, I feel like my friendships got better, my family relationships got better. My husband, like, my relationship got better. Just like, it was so eye-opening to me how a healthy relationship with food was like the Kickstarter for me into having a healthy relationship with life, and like having time to go after the things that I wanted to do, having energy to do the things that I
Mhm.
wanted to do. Like, my whole entire day wasn't spent thinking about food anymore,
Mhm.
and I really do feel like that's when my kind of worlds collided, because at the time, like, as I was recovering, I was seeing that there probably, and again, this was 2008, so like wasn't as mainstream as it is now, but I was seeing all of these jobs pop up for dietitians that were like bariatric surgery and weight loss.
Mhm.
And I was like, I don't want to do any of this. Like,
Yeah,
I think I just want to have my own practice
right.
so I can practice in the way that I want.
Yeah, I really
Yeah.
want to talk about that, but I want to just
Yeah.
ask you, this question because it came up in my head, and I think it would be really interesting for the listeners.
Yeah.
So you said that the process from going, let's say, strictly from traditional dietetics to, let's say, fully to intuitive eating was like a 1 to 2 year progression.
Yeah. And probably like 2 to 3, actually, now
Two
that
to
I think
three.
about it, probably like
Yeah.
2 or 3 years. Yeah.
So could you talk a little bit about like, because I definitely had that when I'm like, intuitive eating is not real. Like it can't be like, but yes, it is. But like, should I diet? Should I like, can I accept this weight? Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely a lot of back and forth. And I think I don't want to say it's harder for dietitians than clients, because I think it's harder for everybody. Like it just matters what situation you're in. But I feel like there were so many reinforcements of diet culture, not only in my job, but in my boss, asked me to run the weight loss group. Like, back then social media wasn't social media. Like it's not the same as it was today. But back then, I don't know if you remember, like food blogs were really popular.
Mm-hmm.
2008-ish, like food
Mm-hmm.
blogs are popular. So a lot of people are talking about like nutrition and like weight and food blogs and all of the CEUs. Like I remember going to a conference that was strictly like weight management 101. Like basically there's so many so many diet culture reinforcements trying to swim upstream in an intuitive eating type of way where it's like, oh, well, I should have that because that's what I want. Like, I should listen to my body. I should not worry about weight. It's so different than diet culture. And I feel like you come up to these roadblocks and you just have to like jump over the hurdle, but then there's another hurdle 5 minutes away,
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
basically, like you're constantly swimming. I like to say, like you're swimming upstream
Mm-hmm.
because everyone else is kind of diet culture, diet culture, diet culture. But at the same time, I think when you have these hurdles, you have mini victories in a sense. Like I remember, like I don't want to say like specific eating disorder behaviors, but I remember like the first day that I didn't do any eating disorder behaviors, I was like, oh my gosh, I did it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you have these hurdles as you go along that give you the confidence that make you feel like, okay, I'm doing this the right way, you
Right.
know?
So each
That helps.
hurdle
Yeah.
that you get over is like reinforcing, like this is like my
Yes.
truth.
Yes. And you're going to have ups and downs. Oh my gosh, you were going to have ups and downs. Like you are going to have times where you will slip back and that's totally expected, but like you make it one step back, 2 steps forward.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Definitely. So when you were working in the field before you switched over to intuitive eating, did you feel that sense of like cognitive dissonance that we all
Oh my
talk
gosh,
about?
yes.
Yeah.
How Evelyn describes it when she talks about it on podcasts and stuff was exactly what I went through. It was like, but I don't know, like what about this? Like what about that? I questioned so much because this was the first time I heard, what it was like to have a healthy relationship with food. Like in my 23, 24 years of existence, especially coming from like the dietetics world too.
Mm-hmm.
It's different.
Definitely. Yeah. So you said that you didn't see yourself working in like bariatric surgery or weight loss, and so you
Mhm.
decided to do your own practice. So when
Yeah.
when did you make that decision? Like how many years ago?
Yes. So I knew it's so funny. I knew I wanted to open up my own practice probably like 2008-ish. Like I knew like I wanted to do this, but I did not open up until 2011. How horrible is that?
Mm,
But it's so normal. I did a lot
yeah.
of research
Mm-hmm.
because I was trying to figure out like what was the best, I think I worked on my sole proprietor versus LLC for like 6 months, like
Mm-hmm.
researching like what exactly is the best
Mm-hmm.
decision. And I'm just like, I should have had a coach just to tell me
Right.
what to do.
Right. Right.
But yeah, so I researched my private practice. I did have a situation like, so basically I moved out of the city. So at that time, I pretty much knew I was going to probably marry my boyfriend, who is now my husband.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that we were not going to live in the city. So I knew that we were probably going to live somewhere like Westchester or Rockland area. So I back then, virtual private practice wasn't as huge as it is now. So I basically just said, well, I'm not going to start my private practice until I'm actually settled into my like home. I don't know where we're moving. So that was a little bit of a, uh, you know, bump in the road to
Mm-hmm.
get started, but it really did take me 3 years to get started.
So I heard you say that on another podcast, and I think
Yeah.
that's like so normal. But do you think that the 3 years was like partly because you were just so afraid to start?
Oh yes. Oh my gosh. I was so afraid to start. I was so afraid to put myself out there. Like I didn't know anything about business or marketing, which is so shocking to me now, because like what I love to talk about and love to do, but I didn't know. So I had to really kind of get used to the fact that I was going to be doing challenging things as a business owner and like putting myself out there. And there's of course the risk of quote unquote failure. But I
Mm-hmm.
think and I took this from my eating disorder recovery, like, cause I was kind of going through this at the same time. And I said, listen, like I've failed at eating disorder recovery a whole bunch, but I got back up and I did it again.
Mm-hmm.
So why not be resilient in this aspect of my life too?
Mm-hmm. I totally relate to that because
Yeah.
when I was starting my practice, it was because I just like hit rock bottom in my career where I was like, I don't want to work in a nursing home forever. And like, what other
Yeah.
jobs are out there? And
Yeah.
like, we work so hard in like the science field and then we make so little money. Like, the only other option is really private practice. But I didn't want to, this was before I knew about intuitive eating, and I didn't want to be the diet police. So I was like, okay, what do I do now? Then when I learned about intuitive eating, I'm like, I could actually do this, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know. It's so awesome to like have your world open up to so many possibilities, like being intuitive eating aligned, because uh, it just feels so good. Like you are not putting people on diets.
Yeah, it feels so
You're
good.
helping
But
them. Yeah.
so how did you, okay, so tell us or like explain in depth, like how did you have the confidence or the like did you how did you just figure out how to run business? And now look where your business is. But like let's talk about in 2011 when you were just
Oh my
starting.
gosh. I would say I just started. I had no idea what I was doing, but I just started. And I think that that is probably like the best advice that I have for anybody, because when it comes down to it, like that's the hardest decision. It's the hardest decision is to start, and then you kind of just figure things out as you go along. And I made so many mistakes at the beginning. Like that's why I created Pursuing Private Practice, because I felt like I had, remember like the 300-page book?
Mm-hmm.
I had
Yeah.
that. I had like a couple people that were helping me because I kind of knew them from different connections through like Penn State and things like that. But I really did not have any group to help me with the business stuff. So I kind of just figured it out like one Google search at a time.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But slowly but surely, I built my practice up from 1 day a week, which literally like it took me 3 months. I rented office. I remember this. I rented office space and I didn't even get my first client for 3 months.
Wow.
Like that's also normal too, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, like I took it one client at a time. So I started at 1 day, and then slowly but surely I had 2 days, then I had three, and then right before I had my first son, well, I got married to my boyfriend, my current
Mm-hmm.
husband, and then right before we had our first child, I was finally at like full time. So
Wow.
I hired somebody for maternity leave, and that was
Mm-hmm.
kind of my first experience too, like hiring someone for my business, because I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to go out on maternity leave for like at least 2 months and like kind of get used to being a mom.
Mm-hmm.
um, but yeah, it took a while. It took 3 years to like really build it up, because I had my son in 2014. So from 2011 to when I started to 2014 when I was full time, like it takes a while to build up.
Mm-hmm. Were you still working part-time when you were building the business or no?
Yeah, so I had a part-time job from 2011 to 2012, or no, 2013. Because I switched from another diabetes. I know it's kind of a long story, but I switched from a diabetes, my full-time diabetes job, to like a part-time diabetes job at another hospital. And then I also had a job at Manhattanville College. I was counseling the students there, which was awesome experience to start eating disorder work, because I felt like all my clients there had eating disorders, and I had the whole entire counseling center like literally in the next hallway from me. So I used those people so much, like just to learn. It was such great experience. And then there was a little bump in the road. I got a hospital job, but the account closed. So it was
Mm-hmm.
like literally 4 months and that was it.
Got it.
But
Got it.
yeah.
Okay, so from 2011 to 2014, you basically built your private practice,
Yeah.
but now it's not that model is not what you're using now, right? Like you're not just doing
Yeah,
one-on-one.
well, so basically what happened was 2005, and long story short, like Pursuing Private Practice started out as just a simple book series, and then it became a DIY course, then it became a little bit of a group program, and now it's like a group membership.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's Dietitian Business School. But basically what happened was I came back from maternity leave and I didn't have as full of a practice as I had when I left it. So I decided, I was like, I've always wanted to do something for professionals. like, maybe this is the time. Like, I had this new energy too as a mom. I was like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to show my son that you can do anything you want in the
Mm-hmm.
world.
Yeah.
So I had a little bit of that attitude and a little bit of a blank schedule because I had my babysitting, like my daycare set up.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to start just writing a simple guide for professionals on how to build a practice. And literally, it was just one step at a time. Like that turned into something bigger, that something turned into something bigger, that something turned into something bigger. And now it's like its own full blown company, which
Wow.
is amazing. Yeah. But that process took for another 4 years, like just
Right.
like the business took 3 years to get me full.
Right.
That process has taken 4 years in order to get it to the level that it's at now.
So how did you like do that? Like, how did you, like, are you very tech savvy? Like, did you just like invest a
Yeah.
lot up front? Like,
No,
how'd you
no, no,
figure that
no.
out?
It was literally like with pursuing private practice, it was literally one step at a time. So basically, like it started off as books, then it
Mm-hmm.
went to a course. So I did have to hire some people to help me along the way. Like I did have an editor. I hired, it's so funny. Like looking back, I'm like, I don't even know how I did this, but I
Yeah.
hired another dietitian to help me with the practice stuff. And her name is Valerie. She was counseling some clients and she also helped me with some of like the organization stuff with the course. So she was a little bit of like a hybrid virtual assistant, even though
Mm-hmm.
she was a dietitian.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I saw that I had something, that's when I invested in a business like course just
Mm-hmm.
to help me. I did Dana Malstaff's course, like just to help me like kind of organize everything. And then once I did that and I saw like, hey, I still have questions, I need help. Then I did a mastermind. And now I invest in business education stuff all the time, but I'm at the
Mm-hmm.
level now that it's just normal for me to do that.
Right.
But it
So
didn't start off that way.
yeah, no, I'm just asking because like I think that like for me at least, like I'm a bunch of years behind you, and I'm thinking, how did she do that? Like, or like, are you just very decisive? How do you decide?
Yeah,
You know?
no, it's so I've had, oh my gosh. Well, first of all, if it sound when I talk about it, I'm leaving out
Right,
all of the failures.
right,
Like,
right, right, right.
so I
Well,
just want everyone to know that.
we want to hear the failures. We want to hear the
I
good
know.
stuff.
Well, the failures, like, so the books are no longer for sale. The book was, I don't want to say the book was a failure because the book was what really started me off, but
Mm-hmm,
updating a book and like keeping a book up to date and the editing format of everything was just like not my strong suit whatsoever. So
mm-hmm,
that definitely did not stick. Like I'm proud of those books, but literally like I would like to burn them, to be very
mm-hmm.
honest with you, because
But the
now so many,
books were the template for what
yeah, the
became.
books were the
Right,
template for the course. Yeah. And
right.
the course too. I mean, like I've messed up with technology. I have messed up in my email marketing systems. I have messed up like, if customer service delivery, like people haven't gotten certain things that they've gotten, like this was all the way back in 2017. I definitely didn't have a clear marketing plan for the course, like all the way back in 2017 when I started that, because I was kind of marketing it to like all dietitians. It was like all dietitians, private practice. And
Mm-hmm,
I did have a couple of people that were in weight loss that signed up. And then
mm-hmm,
it just kind of felt like a little icky. So
mm-hmm,
that's when I decided in 2018-ish to just market to dietitians that were interested in intuitive eating. Because the thing is, like, I hear this too from other people, and I've experienced this like in business masterminds and stuff, and I've never done like a specific dietitian business mastermind, but I've heard this from other people. Like you go into a space and there's the keto dietitian and the
mm-hmm,
detox weight loss dietitian, and like the business coach is helping them with their mission,
mm-hmm.
and you're over here like, but that's what I'm trying to stop. Like
Right,
I'm trying to
right.
help people heal their relationship with food. So that's also when I decided, you know it really is so best for pursuing private practice to be like weight inclusive, to be
Mm-hmm.
intuitive eating aligned. So there's no question about what I stand for. And that I think just makes it a really inclusive space.
I agree with that. And I think that like I've been
Yeah.
in masterminds that are not just for dietitians, and things come up that the person's like, promoting something on their Instagram or whatever, just whatever is having to
Yeah.
do with be a certain body type or eat in a certain way, and it doesn't align with my values. So especially if you're in a dietitian group, that could feel like out of alignment.
Exactly. Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but what is your vision for the business? Maybe not 20 years down the line, but like,
I know.
five
I was like,
years down
Gila,
the
I don't
line.
know if I have a 20-year vision. I no, it's a really good question. I mean, I would say like I had no idea that pursuing private practice was going to be so big 5 years ago. Like I don't know what it's going to be in 5 years, but I do feel like dietitian business school is really the product of me trying many different things and kind of saying like this is what feels right, like an actual membership model where people come, they get lessons, group calls, they get community support, accountability, like they stay for as long as they want. And then when they're ready to leave, like they're ready to leave. Like it's no lifetime something. It's no like forcing people to stay a whole bunch of time. It's, it feels really, really good. It feels like that's exactly what it was meant to be. So
So
we'll see. I'd love to grow it to at least 100 people, if
wow.
not like 200, 300. Like that would be so awesome.
Mhm.
But I don't know exactly when that's going to happen. So we will see.
Got it. So, what was I just gonna say? Sorry, my mind just went blank. So, right now you're doing the membership,
Yeah.
and you have a bunch of dietitians, and you're basically okay. So, what I was gonna say is that it was a lot of what you did was like trial and error, right? Like
Yeah.
you had a vision. Like, let's say even the book, like that's a really good idea. Write a book, but wasn't exactly going where you wanted. So then that became a course. Then that became what
Yeah.
it is now. So, is that sort of like you said, just start. Like, is that sort of like your advice for people? Like, just start and get out there.
Yes, just start. I would say just start. And at the same time, like, please use your audience and get feedback. And
Mm-hmm.
even if you have an audience of 50 people, like that is an audience. And I would argue that everybody has an audience of 50 people because everyone knows at least like 10 healthcare professionals, like 20 relatives,
Mm-hmm.
10 friends,
Mm-hmm.
like everyone has an audience of 50 people. So just get started and see what feels good for you, what feels good for them, like what questions do they have? I always say too, like when you are going out, what questions do people ask you? They know
Mm-hmm.
you're a dietitian. Like what questions do
Mm-hmm.
people ask you? Like those are the problems that people have,
Mm-hmm. That's
and
true.
they want answers, like they need
Right.
help.
Right.
So just because you don't have an audience of 500 people does not mean that you can't have a successful business.
Right. That's a really good point. Yeah. People always ask me. I mean, sometimes I like just don't want to talk about it,
I
but like,
know. I know.
like I just don't want to tell them what I do because I just don't want to hear about whatever. But not because I don't like love everyone. I just like my brain like hurts sometimes. Like I just
Mhm.
don't. I need to not be thinking about food
Yeah.
and how to not think. Like, but um, but yeah, I think what you're doing is really awesome. So do you think that intuitive eating is becoming more mainstream?
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, I feel like we're still swimming upstream. I do
Mm-hmm.
want to say that. And I do think that for people that are in marginalized bodies, I feel like it still is harder for them to be accepted, whether or not you're living in a big body or any type of body that is just not accepted in society. Like today, it's harder. But I do think that we are definitely making headway. Like diet culture is slowly but surely dying.
Mm-hmm.
People don't want to diet anymore. People are
Mm-hmm.
realizing the harm of
Mm-hmm.
dieting. And even though it still is swimming upstream, like I do feel intuitive eating is the way
Mm-hmm.
for so many people.
Do you find that a lot of clients like they like intuitive eating and they're using it in their lives, but like the last step is like accepting themselves in a larger body or accepting themselves in a weight that they never thought they
Yeah.
would have to?
Yeah. I do think like what I always say is that when you start intuitive eating, you either gain weight, lose weight, stay the same. There's
Mm-hmm.
really no way for us to quote unquote predict what's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen with your body. It really is a trust relationship that you build, like you build that connection again with your body. And at the same time, like I'm here for it. Like I'm here for
Mm-hmm.
body image work. I'm totally here for you to like vent, to complain, to
Mm-hmm.
celebrate, all the emotions. But I do think that when you recover in a body where it's not conventionally accepted, I do
Yeah.
think it's a lot harder for people, at least the clients that I've had in my practice, like it's a
Yeah.
lot harder for them
Yeah.
to be accepting of it. But at the same time, I think recognizing like that's almost their cognitive dissonance, like
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah.
recognizing that, hey, if I want a quote unquote smaller body, I'm going to have to do these things that completely mess up my life.
Right.
Like, I think I'd rather have this body and have a healthy relationship with food and work through the body image stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what I see a lot.
I was going to say, like, what's one tip that you could like leave the listeners with, but I think you just said it, which is something I always find myself saying, which is like, delegating your emotional energy to things that
Yeah.
really are important to you. So if
Hmm.
you could accept that you're in a larger body, but now you're happy, now you have time for yourself and your family and your kids and whoever else is in your life, like, not everybody likes that because they're like,
Yeah,
if I could choose between the two, I would want both.
I know.
Like they aren't ready to make that jump, but I guess maybe it's like a time thing, like just giving
Yeah.
themselves time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I would say like don't be afraid. Brie Campo says this a lot, like to sit in the suck, like it
Yeah.
sucks
Yeah.
sometimes, like, but don't be afraid of that because I think when we try to cover that up, that's when
Hmm.
we use behaviors. Cause like we're
Right.
trying to like cover something up that really we can't really cover up. Like it's
Right.
just we have to kind of just sit with that negative emotion.
Right.
Yeah.
That's definitely
But
like
that's the
when
hard part,
that's the hard
that's the
part.
stuff.
Yeah. And when we talk about like how intuitive eating spills into other areas of your life, it's just like noticing that
Hmm.
for so many of us, we don't allow ourselves to feel angry or sad or hurt or resentful. And those are important emotions to feel.
Exactly.
And food really does cover those emotions.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
just like learning to sit with it. So could you talk to us a little bit about this is like your opinion or maybe what you
Yeah.
use in your practice, but how does somebody like how do you think is the best way to like incorporate nutrition into intuitive eating?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love this question. Like I love nutrition. I think, I mean, maybe it's because I'm a dietitian. I
Right.
just love to cook. I love the all the different components that food brings to our life, like not just the nutrients, but I just
Hmm.
love like the flavors and the textures and things like
Hmm.
that. So I love to incorporate gentle nutrition like right off the bat with somebody, but only if it's appropriate and only if they want to. I feel like
Hmm.
so many times, and this is just sad of diet culture, but I feel like so many times diet culture robs people of being able to learn about gentle nutrition in a
Hmm.
way that doesn't feel diety.
Hmm.
So I totally get why gentle nutrition is the last principle because I feel like when you go through the healing relationship of hunger, fullness, satisfaction, all of those principles that really do help you heal your relationship with food, like once you've healed your relationship with food, then you're ready for a little bit more of a gentle nutrition approach.
Hmm.
So I do think it just depends on the client, like when you introduce it. But I love to talk about like balancing a plate, more so usually it's like adding, like
Yeah.
more like
Yeah.
adding food, like
Right.
adding fuel to your day, making sure that you're eating enough, making sure that you're having like variety and there's all different types of textures and flavors on your plate. And I don't know about you, but I love seasonal like
Hmm.
things. Like I love like right now it's fall, so I love soup and
Hmm.
grilled cheese and all of these like
Yeah.
wonderful, amazing dishes that are perfect for the fall.
Right.
So I love to incorporate something like that. Like, what are your cravings? Like, what are you in the mood for? What are you like, what's satisfying to you? All those things for gentle nutrition.
So do you ever talk about like meal planning or menu planning as a
Yeah.
form of, yeah?
I think, yeah. I mean, I think like there's different schools of thought, but I've heard Evelyn and Elise say that, you can definitely have some element of meal planning and intuitive eating. Like, I think it just depends on you. If you are a person where you love to be scheduled and organized, like, yes, you might like meal planning a little bit more, but if you're also too, like just flexible, I personally have like kind of, I think the best of both worlds. Like I typically will do a grocery shop like once a week or I'm really into Instacart ever since the pandemic hit.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
found Instacart and I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll ever go back. But and that's a privilege to be able to have that. But
Yeah.
basically, like I'll grocery shop once a week and I'll get dinner ingredients for maybe 4 meals. One meal we might take out, one meal might be leftovers, another meal might be like breakfast for dinner or something like
Hmm.
that. So
Hmm.
I'll kind of meal plan that way, but I won't plan exactly what I'm going to eat on every single day because you just don't
Right.
know what you're going to feel like. But
Right. Yes, I love that because I always tell people this is a flexible and
yeah,
suggestive meal plan. Not
yeah,
like if you're in the mood for grilled cheese and your meal plan says grilled chicken, like just make the switch. It's not a big deal.
yeah, exactly.
So do you ever notice like sneaky diet culture or wellness culture when maybe with your clients when it comes to the nutrition part? Like, do you see that coming up?
Oh my gosh, yeah, all the time. All the time. I mean, I feel like diet culture, like I forget who said this, and I feel like a lot of people have said this, but basically we help clients recover to a world that has its own eating disorder.
Right.
Like it's not
That's
like we're
true.
helping people recover to, a perfectly recovered bubble. It
Mm-hmm.
really is like you recover and you're doing so great, and then you go out to dinner and like your cousin says like, "Oh, what about this diet?"
Mm-hmm.
And then like you're at the supermarket and you see all those magazines of like, this person lost X amount of weight. It's like so annoying. And
Mm-hmm.
you recover usually to family systems too that are like very focused on weight and appearance and things like that. So, all to say, like people that recover really do have a very big job ahead of them
Mm-hmm.
in swimming upstream against diet culture when it comes down to it.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of figuring out, and that's where I can go into like boundaries and self-care with clients and really go into like, okay, like you have to take care of yourself. Like, what does that look like in the real world?
Mm-hmm.
You
Like
know?
troubleshooting in session a little bit, like what's
Yeah,
going to happen outside of session.
exactly.
Right. I remember I was on Rena Reiser's podcast. She's also an intuitive eating counselor, and we were talking about like there's a lot of Jewish holidays.
Yes.
And especially this
Especially now.
now, especially now. So like you go from like Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, it's like lots of family time and lots of whatever. And for introverts, that's really overwhelming. And
Yeah.
introverts are people who are recovering from diet culture and then they're around diet culture. And we were saying like just like you would excuse yourself to go to the bathroom, like you could excuse yourself if you're triggered and like have 5 minutes to
Exactly.
yourself. But like we don't, a lot of us don't think that way. A lot of us think like that's so rude or like I have to explain myself. And you just don't. You just don't.
No, you don't. You don't. You whatever you have to do to take care of you, like whatever your self-care boundaries are, like those do not need an explanation. Like that's you existing in the world as the best version of you, and that is what you deserve, Like stick up for your boundaries because no one else is going to stick up for them,
Right.
Like
Yeah,
you're the only one. So,
definitely. Yeah.
I say that a lot.
Okay, so thanks so much for joining us
You're
today.
welcome. Oh
And
my
if there's
gosh,
anything,
anytime.
if there's anything you want to leave the listeners with,
I don't know. I mean, I would think a lot of people listening might be, well, actually maybe dietitians too, but like a lot of people might be struggling, and I would just say recovery is worth it,
mm-hmm,
And if
mm-hmm,
you're a dietitian, like coming over to this side is also worth it.
yeah,
Maybe those dietitians are listening too. Like it's so awesome to help people with their relationship with food. Like the transformation is so powerful. So
it's
worth
life
it.
changing.
Yeah.
It's so meaningful when like, I mean, I see your posts and also just like my clients reach out to me and say like, whatever, I was able to focus on sukkahs this year and not the food. Like it means everything.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I know. And that's why we do what we do.
Yeah, that's why we do it. We do. So I'm gonna have all your information in the show notes. And where can people find you?
Yeah, so a couple places. My group practice is eatwithknowledge.com. Although I will say, because I've been on podcasts before and people are like, how can I work with you? I no longer take new clients. So my
Okay.
associates are taking clients. But really my main focus in the internet world, at least, is for professionals. So pursuingprivatepractice.com is where you can find me there. I have a podcast, Pursuing Private Practice, and Dietitian Business School is dietitianbusinessschool.com, but you can get to it from pursuingprivatepractice.com.
Okay, awesome. Okay, have a great day. Thanks for
Thank
joining
you.
us. It was so much fun.
I know it was.
Okay, bye.